It started like any other December evening in Hollywood. Lights twinkling, crowds buzzing, the aroma of roasted chestnuts mingling with the distant scent of popcorn, and the unmistakable hum of anticipation in the air. The 93rd Annual Hollywood Christmas Parade was set to dazzle once again, a tradition that had brought together stars, fans, and media in a sparkling celebration of glitz and goodwill. Celebrities smiled from atop floats, children waved enthusiastically, and the streets were lined with cameras, ready to capture every magical moment. But this year, something felt different. There was a tension that the holiday lights couldn't hide, a ripple running through the crowd that whispered of impending chaos. And the name on everyone's lips? Meghan Markle. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. From the moment she arrived, the atmosphere shifted. Fans craned their necks, reporters sharpened their pens, and cameras swiveled as if anticipating an event that no one dared yet to fully predict. She had come to Hollywood many times before, certainly, but this was not a gala, a charity dinner, or a press event. This was the parade, a symbol of joy, of community, of tradition. And yet, there she was, appearing almost like a storm in the calm, radiating an aura that some found magnetic and others found infuriating. But the question hanging over the event was simple and impossible to ignore. Who invited her? Imagine walking down a glittering street, confetti drifting lazily in the winter air, and suddenly spotting a figure who feels out of place, yet demands attention. That was Meghan Markle, and the eyes of Hollywood were on her. Not just with admiration, but with suspicion, judgment, and curiosity. The whispers began immediately, hushed murmurs among those standing near the floats. Is she supposed to be here? Did she get an invite? This is unexpected. And in a world where appearances are everything, where every moment is photographed and every gesture is analyzed, Meghan's presence was more than just unexpected. It was a spark waiting to ignite a firestorm. But what made this situation even more volatile wasn't just her fame. It was the tension between Hollywood tradition and royal allure, between established stars and someone who, despite her global recognition, had always walked her own path. The parade was a stage, a carefully curated spectacle where every participant knew their place. Every celebrity had their role, their float, their moment to shine. And here was Meghan Markle, entering the scene like a wild card, rewriting the script without permission, challenging the unspoken hierarchy of Hollywood celebrities. Now, let's not underestimate the stakes. The 93rd Annual Hollywood Christmas Parade isn't just a local celebration. It's a global event, broadcast across screens, shared on social media, dissected by millions. One misstep, one unexpected confrontation, and it could dominate headlines for weeks. And that's exactly what was about to happen. Because while Meghan's presence was already creating murmurs, there was someone in the crowd who would not stand for this intrusion. Someone who, for reasons that would soon become clear, decided to act. Luke Wilson, Hollywood's beloved actor known for his charm, wit, and impeccable reputation, noticed her. And his reaction? Unimaginable. Think about that for a moment. Luke Wilson, a figure synonymous with cool, laid-back charisma, someone who rarely makes waves in public, was about to call security to remove a royal guest from a public event. Can you picture it? The actor who starred in some of the most beloved comedies and dramas of the past 2 decades, suddenly in a situation where he would have to confront a figure like Meghan Markle. The scene alone seems cinematic. A crisp winter night, parade floats gliding under strings of festive lights, and Luke Wilson, phone in hand, navigating a moral and social dilemma that would shock the world. But why? What could possibly have prompted such an extreme response? That's where the story deepens, where the curiosity gap begins to gnaw at your mind. Was it a misunderstanding? A breach of etiquette? Or was it something far more complex? A clash of personalities, a tangled web of Hollywood politics, and perhaps even long-simmering resentment? The answers are layered, surprising, and, in many ways, emblematic of the unpredictability of celebrity life in the 21st century. And it's those layers, those hidden tensions, that make this story impossible to ignore. Imagine being a bystander, watching the situation unfold. The parade continues around you, floats adorned with glittering lights and iconic characters passing by, while the attention narrows down to this one unfolding drama. Security personnel shuffle nervously. Cameras pivot. Spectators murmur, unsure whether to cheer, gasp, or simply stare. And all the while, Meghan Markle stands there, a mix of composure and disbelief on her face, aware that something monumental is about to happen. And then comes the moment that no one could have anticipated. Luke Wilson speaks into his phone, his words measured but firm, requesting immediate security intervention. The announcement travels quietly at first, an almost imperceptible stir in the crowd, but soon escalates into whispers and tension that ripple through the parade. The elegance of the evening is suddenly punctured by a question that will haunt headlines. Is Meghan Markle about to be forcibly removed from one of Hollywood's most cherished events? As you watch this unfold in your mind, think about the symbolism. A royal figure, accustomed to protocol, accustomed to control, suddenly facing the authority of Hollywood's gatekeepers. A beloved actor, acting out of principle, discretion, or perhaps personal frustration. The intersection of fame, reputation, and societal expectations colliding in a public spectacle. There's drama here, but there's also irony. Meghan Markle, a woman who has navigated the most scrutinized stages of the world. From royal palaces to Hollywood sets, facing a challenge she might not have seen coming, from someone many considered an ally or at least neutral. And this is just the beginning. Because while the moment of confrontation is shocking on its own, it is compounded by a series of behind-the-scenes decisions, whispered conversations, and miscalculations that the public would never see until now. We'll explore the parade's backstage chaos, the reactions of other celebrities, the social media explosion, and the personal dynamics that led Luke Wilson to make a choice that would reverberate far beyond a single evening. So, as you prepare to dive into this story, consider the stakes. This isn't just about one parade. It's about power dynamics, celebrity culture, and the fragile balance between respect, entitlement, and public perception. It's about moments that seem trivial but explode into headlines, shaping reputations and narratives in ways that no one can fully control. And it's about Meghan Markle, a figure whose every move is dissected, critiqued, and analyzed, now facing a scenario she couldn't have rehearsed, with consequences that extend far beyond a single evening of holiday cheer. But here's the kicker. The full story, the layers beneath the surface, and the shocking reasons why this confrontation occurred are stranger than anyone could have imagined. There are secrets, miscommunications, and a series of events that will reveal a side of Hollywood and Meghan Markle that the public rarely sees. The chaos, the confrontation, the media frenzy, they're just the tip of the iceberg. And the truth behind who really invited her, who really wanted her gone, and what unfolded in those critical moments will change the way you see this event forever. So stay with me, because this isn't just a story about a parade. It's a story about fame, rivalry, and one of the most unexpected public confrontations in recent Hollywood history. By the end, you'll understand why this moment became the talk of the town, why the headlines couldn't contain it, and why the consequences are still being felt today. And as the floats glided, as cameras clicked, and as the crowd gasped, one question remained hanging in the glittering December air. The night of the 93rd Annual Hollywood Christmas Parade began like a postcard from a perfect holiday. The streets of Hollywood Boulevard shimmered under strings of multicolored lights, reflecting off the windows of high-rise buildings and the polished shoes of attendees. Vendors sold hot cocoa and roasted chestnuts, the scent of which mingled with the faint aroma of popcorn from nearby food stalls. Families lined the streets, bundled in scarves and winter coats, holding their children aloft to get the best view of the floats gliding slowly down the avenue. Cameras clicked incessantly, capturing every twinkle, every smile, every carefully orchestrated movement. The parade had always been a tradition, one of Hollywood's longest-running and most celebrated events. Celebrities participated not just as performers or guests, but as symbolic pillars of the entertainment industry, lending their faces and fame to a cause that celebrated community, charity, and, most importantly, spectacle. For decades, attendees had come to expect a certain rhythm. Excitement in the air, a sense of joyful anticipation, and a pageantry of lights, music, and performances. It was, in short, a meticulously choreographed dance, where every star, every participant, and every float had its place. Until this year. This year, the rhythm would falter, the harmony would break, and the disruption would come in the form of a woman whose name alone was enough to cause headlines, whispers, and heated debates. Meghan Markle. At first, she wasn't even on anyone's radar. The parade had opened with its usual grandeur, marching bands in glittering uniforms, children performing festive choreography, floats carrying iconic figures from movies and television. Reporters and photographers moved alongside security, capturing every detail, every moment. Celebrities waved from their positions on floats, smiling for the cameras, the kind of smiles rehearsed for public consumption. It was a flawless display of tradition, celebration, and Hollywood charm. But then came the subtle shift. A ripple in the otherwise controlled energy of the event, a wave that moved through the crowd and into the minds of the celebrities present. Someone had arrived unexpectedly, or perhaps not unexpectedly, if one considered her fame, but certainly uninvited in the official sense of parade participation. Conversations hushed, and gazes turned toward the newcomer. There she stood, poised, stylish, a figure whose presence commanded attention without even trying. Meghan's entrance was calculated, as it always seemed to be. Her eyes scanned the crowd, her posture perfect, and yet there was an undercurrent, a tension in the air that everyone felt but couldn't yet explain. Those closest to the parade, the insiders who managed floats and coordinated performers, exchanged quick glances. "Is she supposed to be here?" someone whispered. Another muttered, "I don't think so." The murmurs spread through the crowd like wildfire. Rumors began to circulate almost instantly. Who invited her? Was this a publicity stunt? Did someone in Hollywood secretly approve this move? The questions multiplied, echoing in the night, as if the lights themselves couldn't contain the uncertainty. And then, as if fate had scripted it this way, someone noticed. Luke Wilson, known for his cool demeanor, his understated charm, and his long-standing reputation as one of Hollywood's genuinely liked actors, he caught sight of her. His eyes narrowed slightly, and a flicker of concern, or perhaps incredulity, crossed his face. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to the casual observer, but those who knew Luke Wilson's attention to detail recognized it immediately. Something was off. Something was about to happen. And for the first time that evening, the carefully choreographed parade felt like it was teetering on the edge of chaos. Luke Wilson had always approached Hollywood events with a mix of professionalism and relaxed confidence. He understood the unwritten rules: respect your fellow stars, honor the event, and avoid unnecessary drama. But Meghan Markle's presence disrupted that equilibrium. There was a dissonance in the energy, a sense that someone was intruding on a space where roles were clearly defined. And in Hollywood, defined roles were sacred. Crossing them could ignite controversy, media frenzy, or even professional fallout. Security staff were stationed along the sidewalks, casually scanning the crowd, maintaining order without appearing obtrusive. They had handled many unusual situations before: fans trying to breach barricades, intoxicated attendees, even small-scale celebrity feuds, but nothing prepared them for the subtle storm that Meghan Markle's appearance unleashed. It wasn't just her status or her fame. It was the layered complexity of her persona. She was part royal, part Hollywood royalty, a figure whose every gesture was scrutinized. To the untrained eye, she simply looked poised and elegant. But to those who understood the stakes, her presence was a catalyst, a potential spark in a room already charged with anticipation. As the parade continued down Hollywood Boulevard, the floats glided past with mechanical precision. Santa Claus waved from his float, children laughed, and the audience clapped in rhythmic enthusiasm. And yet, beneath the cheerful surface, the tension simmered. Attendees began to whisper, cameras shifted angles, and murmurs reached the ears of those behind the scenes. Someone was going to have to make a decision. Someone would have to determine whether Meghan's appearance was a harmless surprise or a breach of protocol. And that someone, of course, was Luke Wilson. In the back of the crowd, he watched. His mind raced, weighing options. On one hand, the parade was meant to be inclusive, joyous, and celebratory, a hallmark of community spirit. On the other, The stakes were high. Celebrity hierarchy, public perception, and the expectations of an audience that watched every move with an almost obsessive scrutiny. This was not simply a matter of who was invited. It was a matter of control, image, and the preservation of an event that had, for decades, maintained an almost sacred structure. And in Luke's mind, that structure was under threat. From the sidelines, Meghan moved with calculated grace, unaware, or perhaps fully aware, of the scrutiny she was generating. Her presence was magnetic, drawing cameras and attention, and yet, there was an almost imperceptible tension in her expression. This was not a parade she controlled, not a stage she had chosen. She was entering a world where power dynamics were subtle but absolute, where a glance could convey judgment, and a gesture could ignite controversy. And as she moved closer to the main floats, Luke's decision crystallized. Something had to be done. The question was not whether action was necessary, it was how, and when, it would be executed. The crowd, oblivious to the internal deliberations of a Hollywood actor, continued their celebration. Children waved, parents clapped, and social media feeds began to fill with images of glittering lights and smiling faces. But behind the smiles, a storm was brewing, a conflict invisible to most but palpable to those who understood the stakes. And when that storm hit, it would not just disrupt a parade. It would ripple across Hollywood, social media, and even royal circles, leaving shockwaves that no one could ignore. At that moment, the calm before the chaos was palpable. Every participant, every attendee, and every celebrity was on the edge of witnessing a confrontation that seemed almost inevitable. And then, as Luke Wilson reached for his phone, the first words were spoken, a phrase that would echo in headlines for weeks to come. Security. Now? The moment Meghan Markle appeared on the edge of the parade route, the energy shifted instantly. It wasn't a subtle change. It was a ripple that became a wave, a current that pulled everyone's attention toward her. The crowd, already buzzing with excitement, paused mid-clap. Children stopped waving their tiny hands. Photographers lowered their cameras briefly, instinctively focusing on a subject who, at that moment, seemed to command the entire scene without even trying. Her arrival was carefully timed, almost cinematic in its execution. The winter evening air glimmered under Hollywood Boulevard lights, reflecting off the sequins of nearby floats. But it seemed as though the lights themselves conspired to spotlight her. She moved with the poise and composure of someone who understood that every step was under scrutiny, that every gesture might be dissected by cameras, reporters, and social media in real time. And yet, there was an underlying tension in her movements. A subtle urgency that suggested she knew she was crossing into a world that didn't necessarily welcome her intrusion. Those closest to the parade, the producers, float operators, and security team, immediately felt the disruption. Their whispers turned into brief, urgent conversations. "Did she get clearance?" one organizer asked. "No one told us," replied another, eyes scanning the crowd, trying to track her path. It was a small logistical oversight, perhaps, but in the world of Hollywood pageantry, every detail mattered. And Meghan's presence wasn't just a matter of oversight. It was an unpredictable variable in a meticulously controlled event. For the spectators, her presence was magnetic. Cameras flashed, phones recorded, and the social media feed exploded within minutes. People shared photos and videos with captions ranging from admiration to disbelief. Meghan Markle at the Christmas parade? Why is she here? Hollywood can't handle this. The reactions were instantaneous, unfiltered, and chaotic. And in that chaos, a silent tension began to grow among the celebrities on the floats. Luke Wilson, in particular, felt it. From his vantage point, Meghan's entrance wasn't just a surprise, it was a challenge. The parade had rules, unspoken but deeply understood. Celebrities had their places, and every appearance was orchestrated to ensure harmony, visibility, and respect for tradition. Meghan's appearance disrupted that balance. It wasn't just that she was a high-profile guest, it was how she moved through the crowd, commanding attention, drawing focus, and overshadowing moments that had been planned for other stars. Luke's reaction wasn't immediate. He observed, calculating, measuring the potential fallout. Celebrities often tolerated surprises, unexpected fans, media stunts, or wardrobe mishaps. But this was different. Meghan's presence wasn't a simple interruption. It was deliberate. She wasn't just a guest. She was a force, altering the dynamics of the event, challenging the established order. And Luke, known for his cool demeanor and easygoing persona, felt a mix of incredulity and responsibility. Behind the scenes, the security team shifted nervously. The usual crowd management protocols weren't designed for an unexpected Royal Hollywood hybrid. Meghan's fame alone was enough to draw attention, but combined with the tension brewing among the parade's participants, it became a volatile situation. Security whispered among themselves, adjusting positions and communicating with organizers via discreet earpieces. Every eye was trained on her path, anticipating movement, gauging reactions, calculating risk. And then came the first public reaction from the crowd. Someone shouted her name. A small group of fans cheered. Social media amplified it instantly, spreading videos of her approach, each clip receiving thousands of views within minutes. The cheer, however, was quickly tempered by confusion and skepticism. Many in the audience weren't sure why she was there. Some wondered if this was a PR stunt, a calculated intrusion designed to dominate headlines. Others, familiar with her past, speculated about hidden motives, personal agendas, or simple miscommunication. The uncertainty fueled tension, creating a combustible mix of admiration, suspicion, and unease. Meghan, for her part, maintained composure. Her eyes scanned the crowd, taking in the floats, the celebrities, and the spectators. Her smile was controlled, her movements deliberate. Every step communicated grace, confidence, and awareness of the spotlight, yet there was a subtle edge of defiance. She wasn't just participating, she was asserting presence. And that assertion didn't go unnoticed. Luke Wilson, standing near one of the main floats, clenched his jaw slightly. His fingers tapped briefly on his phone before he set it down, weighing options. He understood that a direct confrontation at that moment could escalate matters quickly. Yet ignoring the disruption wasn't an option either. This wasn't about personal feelings. It was about preserving the integrity of an event that had become a cultural institution. He had to act, but how? And would acting spark the very chaos he hoped to prevent? As Meghan moved closer to the parade's core, other celebrities began exchanging glances. Some whispered behind their hands. Others smiled politely, but with raised eyebrows, subtly communicating their disapproval or surprise. The tension wasn't just between Luke and Meghan. It permeated the entire parade ecosystem. There was uncertainty, anticipation, and a growing sense that the night was about to deviate from its planned course. Meanwhile, the media frenzy had begun to take shape. Social media posts circulated rapidly, photos of Meghan with captions questioning her presence, videos of her approaching the floats, and instant commentary dissecting every move. The online world became a magnifying glass, amplifying every nuance, every glance, every step. Within minutes, hashtags trended, debates ignited, and speculation about the legitimacy of her presence escalated. The virtual chaos mirrored the real-world tension, intertwining public perception with the unfolding drama. And just when it seemed that Meghan might pass unnoticed by the main parade organizers, a subtle but pivotal moment occurred. Luke Wilson, having observed the entire approach, made a decision that would define the night. He reached for his phone again, this time with resolve, preparing to take action. The anticipation hung thick in the air, as if the festive lights themselves dimmed in recognition of the moment. Everyone watching, whether in person or online, sensed a confrontation building, though the exact nature of it remained uncertain. The crowd, oblivious to the internal deliberations of Hollywood actors and parade organizers, continued to cheer and clap. Children waved, vendors sold snacks, and the floats glided along their route. But beneath the surface, a storm was forming. Meghan's presence, initially a subtle ripple, had now become a tidal wave of tension, poised to crash against the carefully constructed order of the parade. And as she drew nearer, as Luke prepared his next move, and as the crowd buzzed with curiosity and confusion, one fact became clear. This was no ordinary parade. This was a moment that would be dissected, analyzed, and debated for weeks. A moment that would dominate headlines, divide opinions, and forever be etched in the memory of those who witnessed it. As Meghan Markle glided closer to the heart of the parade, the subtle tension that had been simmering in the air escalated into a palpable sense of anticipation. Every step she took seemed measured, deliberate, as if she knew that millions of eyes, both on-site and across the globe, were tracing her path. The sparkle of her outfit caught the lights from the parade floats, reflecting in the eyes of spectators and camera lenses alike, creating an almost cinematic halo around her. But for those behind the scenes, it wasn't glamour or fashion that mattered. It was control, and Meghan had the crowd's attention in a way that no one had anticipated. Security personnel subtly repositioned themselves, whispering into earpieces, exchanging quick, urgent glances. They had managed celebrity appearances countless times, yet nothing quite prepared them for this scenario. Meghan was more than a high-profile guest. She was a disruptor, a figure whose very presence challenged the carefully curated hierarchy of the event. The parade, after all, was a delicate ecosystem of celebrities, floats, sponsors, and organizers. Each person's appearance had been planned months in advance, each float's schedule timed to the second. Meghan's intrusion didn't just upset that schedule, it threatened the balance of the entire event. From his vantage point, Luke Wilson's pulse quickened. He had always approached Hollywood events with a calm, easygoing demeanor. He preferred to let things unfold naturally, trusting in decorum and the professionalism of his peers. But Meghan's presence was different. It wasn't just that she hadn't been officially invited. It was the aura she carried, the unmistakable magnetism that drew attention away from everyone else. For Luke, it wasn't personal. It was about preserving the parade's integrity, ensuring that the event remained orderly, and preventing an escalation that could spiral into chaos. He observed her, noting the subtle confidence in her stride, the measured smile she wore, the way she scanned the crowd with awareness. It was a poised, controlled presence, but one that demanded recognition. And in that demand lay the problem. Hollywood's delicate balance relied on everyone knowing their place, following the invisible rules that governed the interaction of fame, expectation, and public perception. Meghan, intentionally or not, had upset that equilibrium. Whispers spread among the floats and parade participants. Some celebrities exchanged looks of surprise. Others tried to mask their reactions behind polite smiles. Is she supposed to be here? One actor whispered to a colleague, who shook their head subtly. I don't think anyone expected this, the other replied. Even the organizers, usually cool under pressure, felt the ripple effect. Emails and texts were sent quickly, attempting to verify her credentials and confirm whether she had been authorized to attend. The responses, delayed and uncertain, only heightened the tension. Meanwhile, the crowd's reaction was a mix of excitement, confusion, and speculation. Phones rose into the air, cameras flashed, and social media feeds began to fill with posts capturing her presence. Some applauded, thrilled to see her in person. Others posted comments questioning the propriety of her attendance. Hashtags began trending within minutes, blending admiration, skepticism, and outright outrage. The scene became a perfect storm of live spectacle and instantaneous media amplification, a convergence of public fascination and digital frenzy. Amid this chaos, Meghan remained composed. She moved with purpose, aware of her surroundings, yet seemingly unbothered by the undercurrent of tension. There was a certain irony in her demeanor, poised, elegant, and seemingly unshakable in a situation that was anything but ordinary. To the casual observer, she was simply a star among many, radiating charm and grace. To those behind the scenes, however, she was a wild card, a variable that could ignite drama at any moment. Luke's internal debate intensified. Ignoring the situation was an option, but it risked allowing the disruption to escalate, setting a precedent that could undermine the parade's authority and order. Confrontation was another option, fraught with risk but potentially necessary to maintain structure. Every instinct told him that something had to be done, yet the public nature of the event complicated matters. Any action could be scrutinized, recorded, and broadcast, transforming a private decision into a global spectacle. The tension reached its peak when Meghan neared one of the main floats, a space typically reserved for long-standing celebrities and carefully choreographed performances. Cameras pivoted, spectators leaned forward, and whispers became more audible. The realization struck Luke with clarity. Her presence had crossed an invisible line. The event, for all its joy and celebration, had rules, and these rules had been quietly but unmistakably violated. At that critical moment, the crowd's energy became almost electric. Children cheered, parents clapped, and cameras flashed incessantly. Yet beneath the outward celebration, an invisible narrative unfolded, a story of authority, etiquette, and social hierarchy. Meghan's elegance and poise contrasted sharply with the growing anxiety among those responsible for the parade's order. Each step she took toward the float magnified the tension, and each gaze from the crowd and celebrities layered complexity onto an already volatile situation. Then, Luke made his move. He reached for his phone once more, fingers hovering over the screen as he dialed the number that would initiate the next sequence of events. This was no casual call. It was a deliberate, calculated action, one that would ripple through the parade, the media, and social media feeds around the world. The security team, sensing the tension, responded immediately, positioning themselves to intercept if necessary. The first whispers of movement in her direction began to circulate, and Meghan, ever perceptive, noticed the subtle shift in the crowd's energy. She paused briefly, tilting her head as if acknowledging the undercurrent of authority closing in around her. The cameras captured the moment with precision. A subtle exchange of glances that would later be analyzed endlessly by media pundits and social media commentators. It was an almost imperceptible recognition of conflict, a quiet acknowledgement that the night was no longer just a celebration. Something significant, unprecedented, and deeply scrutinized was about to unfold. The crowd remained oblivious to the full gravity of the situation, caught between holiday cheer and curiosity. Yet the tension, invisible to most, was suffocating to those orchestrating the event. Meghan's approach, Luke's decision, and the security team's response had created a chain reaction that none of the organizers had anticipated. Every actor, every celebrity, every photographer and bystander was now part of a story that was evolving in real time. A story that would dominate headlines, spark debate, and redefine the narrative of the parade itself. And then, just as Meghan prepared to take her next step, a faint but unmistakable movement rippled through the security line. Phones buzzed, walkie-talkies whispered urgent commands, and Luke, standing firm, gave a subtle nod. This was the moment when the calm veneer of the parade shattered completely. The intersection of fame, etiquette, and public expectation had reached a breaking point. What happened next would not just disrupt the parade. It would become a defining moment in Hollywood history, a confrontation between two worlds that rarely intersected so directly. The elegance of the event, the glitter of the lights, and the joy of the crowd were about to collide with authority, protocol, and tension in a way no one could have predicted. And in that collision, one question hung in the air above the crowd. How would Meghan Markle respond when the very power of Hollywood's gatekeepers came to meet her? To understand why Luke Wilson reacted the way he did that night, you have to step into his world for a moment. Luke isn't just the effortlessly charming actor Hollywood fans know from movies like Old School or The Royal Tenenbaums. He's someone who has spent decades navigating the delicate politics of fame, understanding the invisible lines that separate admiration, intrusion, and chaos. In Hollywood, there's a rhythm to every event, a balance of egos and expectations that must be maintained. Luke has always been someone who senses that rhythm instinctively, a skill honed over years of premieres, award shows, and live events. That night, the parade was supposed to be simple, a celebration of community, charity, and holiday cheer. Luke had been invited months in advance, as had dozens of other celebrities, each with their role meticulously planned. He had expected a night of smiling for cameras, waving at fans, and enjoying the atmosphere. But as Meghan Markle approached, that expectation evaporated. The moment he saw her, the actor felt an instinctive, visceral reaction. Something about her presence disrupted the balance he had long respected in Hollywood gatherings. Luke's mind raced. He wasn't one to act impulsively. He rarely allowed emotion to dictate his behavior. Yet this situation was different. The parade wasn't just about spectacle. It was about control, respect, and honoring the structure of the event. and Meghan's appearance, unannounced and unvetted, threatened that structure. He could see it in the subtle movements of the other celebrities, the quick whispers of the organizers, the shifting postures of the security team. The energy of the parade had changed. The playful, celebratory rhythm had been replaced by a current of tension, anticipation, and unease. He remembered thinking, almost aloud to himself, that this wasn't just about protocol. It was about setting a precedent. Allowing someone, no matter how famous or powerful, to bypass the rules could encourage future disruptions. It could turn what was supposed to be a festive, orderly event into a chaotic free-for-all, where celebrity status alone dictated presence and authority. Luke wasn't willing to let that happen, not on his watch. At the same time, he acknowledged the delicate nature of the situation. Meghan Markle was not just any celebrity. She carried the weight of royalty, media scrutiny, and global fame. Every move she made was analyzed, and any confrontation could escalate beyond the parade, spilling into headlines, social media threads, and international commentary. Luke had to weigh his response carefully, balancing action with discretion, authority with tact. Every second counted. He thought back to his years in Hollywood, observing the delicate dance of celebrity interactions. He had seen misunderstandings spiral out of control, minor slights blow up into full-blown scandals, and casual comments dissected endlessly. The stakes of public perception were enormous, and he understood them better than most. This knowledge sharpened his focus. He knew that ignoring the situation could be just as dangerous as confronting it. Luke observed Meghan's movements as she drew nearer to the core of the parade. Every step was purposeful, every glance calculated. To some, it was grace and elegance. To Luke, it was a challenge, an assertion of presence that disrupted the equilibrium of the event. He could see the subtle signs, the way other celebrities shifted, the way organizers whispered urgently into their earpieces, the almost imperceptible tension rippling through the crowd. It was a situation that demanded intervention, yet one that required delicate execution. As he reached for his phone, Luke's mind ran through possible scenarios. He considered the optics of calling security, how it would appear to the audience, how Meghan might react, how the media would interpret it. He knew the move could be criticized as aggressive or unnecessary. Yet he also understood that failing to act could be catastrophic, allowing the disruption to escalate beyond anyone's control. He remembered the advice his older brother, Owen Wilson, had once given him about public events. Control what you can, ignore what you can't, and always think 3 steps ahead. Tonight, those words felt like a lifeline. Luke weighed each decision carefully, considering both immediate and long-term consequences. Every movement he made, every word he spoke, had to be deliberate, measured, and purposeful. Meanwhile, he couldn't ignore the personal dimension. Luke had a reputation for fairness, for treating his colleagues with respect, and for maintaining decorum in public settings. Allowing someone to bypass established rules could not only disrupt the parade, it could tarnish his credibility and the trust others placed in him. He felt a responsibility not just to the event, but to the legacy of the parade itself. And yet, amidst all these calculations, there was also a sense of disbelief. How had the situation escalated so quickly? How had Meghan Markle managed to navigate through the crowd undetected until now? The parade had been meticulously planned, every celebrity accounted for, every float scheduled to the second. Yet here she was, approaching the central area with a confidence that defied the structure of the event. It was audacious, and it demanded action. Luke's fingers hovered over the phone. He knew that once he spoke to security, the chain of events would set in motion a confrontation that could not be undone. He thought of the crowd, of the cameras, of the countless eyes following every movement. He considered Meghan's response, the reaction of the other celebrities, and the inevitable media storm that would follow. It was a high-stakes decision, the kind that defined not just a night, but a narrative. As Meghan took her next step, Luke made his choice. He pressed the button, dialing the number that would summon security to her location. His voice, calm but firm, conveyed the urgency of the situation. Behind him, the organizers sensed the shift, recognizing that the equilibrium of the parade was about to be tested in ways no one had anticipated. Luke Wilson, cool, composed, and calculated, had decided that some rules were too important to ignore. even if it meant confronting one of the world's most scrutinized figures. And in that instant, the calm of the Hollywood Christmas parade shattered, replaced by a tension that would ripple through the night, through headlines, and through social media, forever altering the story of the 93rd annual Hollywood Christmas parade. As Luke Wilson ended the call with security, a strange stillness seemed to settle over his corner of the parade. The usual hum of excitement, the claps, the cheers, the marching bands, persisted around him, but in his immediate vicinity, there was an almost imperceptible pause. It was as if the world itself sensed that something unprecedented was about to unfold. Every person in that moment was caught between the festivities of the evening and the looming confrontation that only Luke and a few others fully understood. Luke's mind raced. He considered how this decision would be perceived not just tonight, but in the days, weeks, and months to follow. Hollywood, he knew, was unforgiving when it came to public perception. One misstep could dominate headlines, be dissected in interviews, and spark online debates that lasted far longer than anyone intended. Every movement, every glance, every decision would be scrutinized, and there was no room for error. He glanced at Meghan, noticing her subtle awareness of the attention she was drawing. She walked with confidence, her posture perfect, her smile controlled, and yet there was an almost imperceptible tension in her eyes. Luke could sense that she knew something was shifting around her, that the energy of the parade had changed, and that her presence had become a focal point for an invisible battle of authority and protocol. The security team moved into position, strategically placing themselves around her path. Their movements were deliberate but discreet, designed to avoid alarming the crowd while ensuring that they could act immediately if necessary. Luke watched closely, noting the precision of their positioning, the readiness in their stances. This was more than just crowd control. It was a calculated containment of potential disruption, a response to a situation that had escalated far beyond the usual expectations of a holiday parade. Luke's thoughts drifted momentarily to the wider implications of the confrontation. He knew that Meghan Markle's presence alone guaranteed media coverage, but the act of security moving to escort her away would transform the story from a simple festive parade into a full-blown spectacle. Headlines would question the motivations, the etiquette, the appropriateness of her attendance, and the decision to remove her. Social media would explode with speculation, memes, and debates. It was a scenario that no one had planned for, yet Luke understood that inaction could be equally catastrophic. He reminded himself of the principle he had long followed in Hollywood: control what you can, anticipate what you can't, and act decisively when necessary. The parade was a tradition, a celebration, and a stage, but it was also an ecosystem of expectations. Every celebrity, every float, every movement was choreographed to maintain balance and harmony. Meghan's unplanned appearance had disrupted that balance, and Luke felt a responsibility, not just as a participant, but as someone who understood the stakes, to restore it. Luke's internal deliberation wasn't without nuance. He respected Meghan's accomplishments, her influence, and her ability to command attention. He understood the magnetic pull of her presence, the way she could captivate an audience with subtle gestures and poised demeanor. Yet admiration did not equate to permission. The parade had rules, explicit and implicit, and those rules were designed to ensure order and fairness. Allowing someone, even someone of Meghan Markle's stature, to bypass them could set a precedent that undermined the authority of the event, creating a ripple effect for future occasions. As Meghan drew closer to the central floats, Luke noticed subtle signs of tension among the other celebrities. Some whispered to one another, their expressions a mix of amusement, surprise, and concern. Others attempted to maintain polite smiles, masking a sense of unease at the disruption. Luke understood their reactions. He had observed Hollywood dynamics for years and recognized the delicate interplay of ego, hierarchy, and perception. Meghan's presence had upset that balance, and he knew the responsibility to act had fallen to him by default. Meanwhile, the crowd remained blissfully unaware of the underlying tension. Children continued waving, parents clapped, and spectators marveled at the floats and performances. Cameras flashed, capturing the spectacle, oblivious to the drama building at the center of the parade. Social media feeds, too, were alive with images and videos of Meghan's presence, though few understood the full significance of the unfolding events. To the public, it was a simple surprise appearance. To Luke and the security team, it was a carefully managed crisis. Luke's resolve hardened as he observed Meghan's posture, her measured steps, and the subtle acknowledgement in her eyes that she understood the heightened attention. He recognized a silent challenge in her composure, a quiet assertion of presence that demanded recognition yet tested the boundaries of protocol. This was not an ordinary encounter. It was a collision of worlds, royalty, Hollywood, public perception, and authority, all converging in a single, charged moment. He knew the next steps were critical. Security was in place. The crowd was largely unaware of the brewing confrontation, and Meghan was approaching the central area of the parade. Luke's decision to intervene would determine not just the trajectory of the evening, but the narrative that would dominate headlines for days. There was no room for hesitation, no margin for error. Every move had to be precise, deliberate, and calculated. As the seconds ticked by, Luke observed her approach, noting the rhythm of her steps, the direction of her gaze, and the subtle reactions of those around her. He prepared mentally for the escalation, aware that the next moment could redefine the event entirely. The calm of the parade, the festive energy, and the glittering lights had become a backdrop to a high-stakes interaction, one that combined social dynamics, celebrity authority, and the unpredictable power of human presence. And then, the first movement from security reached Meghan's side, a discreet shift, an almost imperceptible positioning that signaled the imminent intervention. The crowd remained largely oblivious, yet Luke could feel the tension in the air, the anticipation that something monumental was about to happen. He knew that the following seconds would not just define the night. They would define headlines, social media narratives, and the memory of the parade itself. The stage was set. The players were in position, and the world, though unaware of it, was about to witness a confrontation that no one could have predicted. The subtle tension that had been building for the past several minutes now erupted into a tangible wave as security personnel began to move. Their approach was precise, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye, yet deliberate, a choreography of caution, control, and authority. These were professionals accustomed to managing crowds, redirecting fans, and handling unexpected situations at high-profile events. But nothing had prepared them for this. Meghan Markle, unannounced, navigating toward the central floats with the confidence of someone fully aware of her fame and influence. As the lead security officer shifted into position, the other team members fanned out, forming a protective barrier around the approaching celebrity. They spoke into discreet earpieces, their voices calm but urgent. "Position yourselves," one murmured. "Keep it controlled. No escalation unless necessary." Their movements were fluid, synchronized, practiced, a silent signal that the situation had just crossed from routine into critical. The crowd, blissfully unaware of the impending confrontation, continued to cheer, wave, and clap. Parents hoisted children onto shoulders for better views. Photographers snapped images, and social media feeds lit up with posts capturing every twinkle of parade lights and glittering float. Yet amid the festive energy, a new dynamic had emerged. Meghan's presence, once merely a surprise, had become the focal point of attention, not just for the audience but for the event itself. Luke Wilson watched closely, observing both Meghan and the security team. Every detail mattered. The spacing between personnel, the subtle gestures signaling readiness, the positioning relative to the floats and crowd. Luke's experience in Hollywood had taught him to anticipate outcomes based on small cues, shifts in posture, fleeting glances, and micro-expressions that spoke volumes. He could sense the tension radiating from Meghan, the unspoken acknowledgement that she was about to be challenged, yet fully prepared to assert herself. The first security officer took a measured step forward, subtly closing the gap between Meghan and the central floats. His presence was professional, neutral, yet firm, a clear signal of authority. Meghan, noticing the shift, paused briefly, tilting her head slightly, acknowledging without confrontation. It was a delicate dance, one of observation, awareness, and calculated restraint. Both parties understood the stakes. One misstep could ignite a public spectacle the likes of which the parade had never seen. Around them, the atmosphere shifted. Other celebrities on the floats began exchanging glances, whispering, and reacting to the sudden tension. Some raised eyebrows in surprise. Others tried to mask their concern with polite smiles. The organizers behind the scenes, previously preoccupied with logistics and coordination, now moved with heightened awareness. Walkie-talkies buzzed with quick commands. Subtle gestures directed performers and camera operators, ensuring that the crowd remained calm while the situation unfolded. Meghan's poise, however, remained unshaken. Every movement was deliberate, every glance controlled, every step calculated. She radiated confidence, a presence that drew attention yet commanded respect. To the untrained eye, she was simply a star navigating a crowd. To those managing the parade, she was an unpredictable force, a variable that had to be contained without causing disruption, outrage, or spectacle. Luke Wilson felt a mix of determination and apprehension. He knew that what was about to happen would be scrutinized endlessly by the public and media. Every move, every word, every gesture would be recorded, replayed, and debated. He had to ensure that the intervention was conducted professionally, firmly, yet tactfully. It wasn't just about removing someone from a parade. It was about managing perception, maintaining authority, and preventing escalation. The crowd, meanwhile, began to sense a subtle shift, even if they didn't fully understand it. Cameras pivoted, some spectators paused mid-clap, and whispers rippled through the front rows. Social media users started commenting on the unusual energy, capturing snippets of movement and posting speculations. What's happening with Meghan? Why is security moving toward her? Is she part of the parade or not? The digital world, ever vigilant, amplified every micro-moment, turning an unseen tension into a viral spectacle in real time. The first direct approach came in the form of a gentle but firm physical barrier, a step alongside Meghan, guiding her away from the float area without making sudden contact. The officer's movements were precise, designed to maintain personal space while establishing authority. Meghan's reaction was subtle, a slight adjustment of her posture, a small, knowing glance, an acknowledgement without confrontation. The silent negotiation between presence and control had begun. Luke observed, calculating, anticipating. He understood the psychology of such interactions, assertive but non-aggressive positioning, maintaining professional composure, signaling authority without provocation. Every second mattered. Every micro-movement communicated intent. Security had to guide without forcing, protect without escalating, and assert authority without igniting a spectacle. Then came the whispers from the sidelines. Fellow celebrities murmured under their breath. Organizers shifted nervously, and the crowd began to sense that something significant was unfolding. The festival energy that had characterized the parade moments before now intermingled with suspense, curiosity, and speculation. It was the kind of tension that both fascinated and unnerved, a live narrative forming in front of thousands of eyes and countless social media streams. The lead officer made the decision to position a small team ahead of Meghan, creating a subtle corridor to redirect her path. Each step was choreographed to preserve dignity, maintain crowd engagement, and prevent confrontation. Meghan's poise, however, remained unwavering. She navigated the corridor with awareness, every step measured, her presence commanding attention even as she was being guided. Luke Wilson, standing a few feet away, felt the full weight of the moment. He had initiated the security intervention, and now he observed its execution with a mixture of relief and tension. Relief that professionals were handling the situation with precision. Tension because he knew that the next few minutes could determine the trajectory of the evening, the headlines, and the public narrative surrounding the parade. As Meghan continued along the redirected path, the subtle push and pull of authority and presence intensified. The crowd, sensing the unusual movement, leaned forward, cameras raised, and social media posts multiplied. Every frame captured, every angle recorded, contributed to a narrative forming in real time. A narrative that would dominate the conversation around the parade for weeks. And just as the intervention seemed to be proceeding smoothly, a small but critical moment occurred. Meghan paused, turning slightly toward the lead officer. Her eyes met his, calm yet deliberate, conveying awareness, challenge, and control. It was a silent acknowledgement that she understood the authority being exercised, yet it also hinted that she was fully prepared to assert herself if pushed too far. Luke felt the tension spike. This was the defining moment, the intersection of celebrity presence, security authority, and public perception. One wrong move, one misread signal, and the controlled redirection could become a headline-making confrontation. He watched, anticipating the next seconds, knowing that the outcome of this interaction would ripple far beyond the parade itself. The tension that had been quietly building now reached a fever pitch. Meghan Markle, walking with poise and confidence, was fully aware of the security team flanking her. The crowd, still largely oblivious to the unfolding drama, clapped and cheered, unaware that the festive atmosphere was on the brink of turning into chaos. Security personnel moved with precision, forming a controlled corridor to redirect her away from the central floats, each step calculated to maintain order without causing a scene. Luke Wilson watched every move intently. He knew the situation required a delicate balance. Too forceful an intervention could spark a public spectacle, fueling media frenzy and social media outrage. Too lenient an approach, and Meghan's presence could disrupt the carefully curated flow of the parade. Luke's experience in Hollywood taught him that perception often mattered as much as action. How an event appeared to the public could define the narrative more than what actually happened behind the scenes. Security communicated through earpieces, their whispers swift and precise. "Guide her to the side," one murmured. "Maintain calm. Keep it professional." They moved like a well-oiled machine, anticipating Meghan's next steps and adjusting positioning to preempt any potential escalation. Their coordination reflected hours of training, but even the best preparations couldn't account for the unpredictability of human behavior, especially someone as poised and media-savvy as Meghan. The actress turned Royal's expression remained composed, her eyes scanning the crowd and the surrounding floats. There was no panic, no visible frustration, only a quiet determination that radiated authority. She had navigated the pressures of public scrutiny before, and tonight was no different. Every subtle adjustment of her posture, every deliberate glance, was a message. She was aware of the intervention, and she would respond on her terms. Luke could sense the growing awareness among the other celebrities. Some craned their necks to see what was happening, whispering to one another. Others kept polite smiles plastered on their faces, though subtle eyebrow raises betrayed their surprise. The organizers, once confident in their planning, now moved with heightened vigilance, watching the interactions closely and ensuring that cameras, floats, and performers remained unaffected. The crowd's reaction started to shift. While most continued their holiday cheer, a few noticed the subtle maneuvering and began pointing, murmuring, and snapping photos. Social media feeds lit up in real time. Security escorting Meghan? What's happening at the parade? Is she being removed? Speculation spread like wildfire, amplifying the tension and creating a digital echo of the physical drama unfolding on the boulevard. As the lead officer positioned himself slightly ahead of Meghan, a critical moment occurred. Meghan paused, slightly tilting her head, as if acknowledging the authority being exercised yet silently asserting her presence. It was a delicate, almost imperceptible challenge, one that spoke volumes without a single word being exchanged. Security personnel adjusted, maintaining professionalism while navigating the thin line between authority and overreach. Luke's heart rate quickened. He had initiated the call to security, but now, watching the execution in real time, he realized the complexity of what he had set in motion. The situation was no longer purely logistical. It was psychological, a high-stakes negotiation of presence, control, and perception. One misstep could ignite confrontation, social media backlash, or worse, a public spectacle that would dominate headlines for days. He glanced around at the other celebrities. Some appeared curious, others concerned, and a few visibly anxious. The shared recognition of an unusual situation had created a silent consensus. This was no ordinary parade moment. Something significant was happening, something that would be remembered long after the lights dimmed and the floats rolled away. Security continued their subtle redirection, maintaining a human buffer around Meghan. Their movements were coordinated to prevent sudden shifts in the crowd while keeping Meghan on a path that avoided the central float area. Each step was deliberate, yet even the most careful choreography carried risk. Meghan's composure suggested she might not acquiesce quietly, and her media awareness meant that any visible reaction could be captured and amplified instantly. Luke took a deep breath, reminding himself to stay calm. He had spent years navigating Hollywood events, and yet this felt unprecedented. The convergence of celebrity, royalty, and public spectacle created a pressure unlike any he had encountered. He understood the gravity. The next few minutes could define not only this parade but also public perception of everyone involved. And then it happened. Meghan, fully aware of the corridor of authority surrounding her, made a subtle pivot. It was nearly imperceptible, a shift of a few degrees, but it carried immense significance. It was a test, a question posed without words. How far would the authority of security extend, and would they respect her space while maintaining control? The lead officer responded instantly, adjusting positioning, signaling the team with precise hand gestures and subtle shifts in stance. The silent dance of control continued, a negotiation conducted in body language, eye contact, and spatial positioning. Luke watched, understanding the stakes. The moment could escalate.